So this is my absolute monster of a pedal board. As you can see, it's a little ridiculous and there's some gaps on it right now because I'm doing some work on it. But it really can do everything under the sun. It can do your basics like overdrive, reverb, delay, things like that. But it can also be a synth. It can also be a vocoder. It can also be an organizer. Now let me tell you, I'm not lying when I say that this tiny little box can do just about everything that this monstrous pedal board can do for a fraction of the price. This pedal is the Zoia from Empress Effects. It might be the single most scary looking pedal I have ever seen, but trust me when I say it's not nearly as complicated as it looks. Now, most videos on the internet focus on all the ridiculous things it can do, you know, talk about it being a modular synth pedal, which is all well and good, but people often forget one of the nicest parts of this pedal is the fact that it is just an amazing, down-to-earth multi-effects. So today we're going to put that to the test. I'm going to use the Zoia to create a really simple lead patch. Now the gear I'm going to be running today isn't that much. My guitar is nice, but for amps, I'm just going to be using a fairly cheap amp sim on my laptop. This is the kind of setup that you generally see any indie bedroom musician use to record all of their work. So let's see just how simple we can make this thing. Now that the Zoia is plugged in, first you should hear what my guitar sounds like totally clean. Now coming over to the Zoia, again, it looks quite scary, but it isn't nearly as complicated as it would seem. Now all of these buttons have different functions. If I hit one, I have this big menu pop up in the screen here, and you can see as I scroll down, like some of them, more stuff lights up, and it seems a bit confusing, right? It's actually quite simple. All of these are essentially going to end up creating our own little pedal board. And so, for example, in this one, we're going to put our audio input, and then, for example, in the next one, we could put a distortion. And then we could run the audio input into the distortion, and then we might here put an audio output, run the output of the distortion into the output, and then we just have a really simple distortion pedal set up. So let's actually do that. I'm going to go up to interface modules here, and then I'm going to go audio input. Now, I actually am running stereo, but you can easily change it to mono like this, and you just set it to left or right. If you're running mono, always set to left. But for now, we're going to run stereo because we can. So done. Now we see we have these little lights here. Now they're not lighting up because no signal's coming through them. As soon as I play... Now these lights are dark because no signal's running through them. If I activate the pedal and strum, you can see that the input module is starting to light up. Now you might have noticed that we didn't actually get anything through the amp just then. And this is because I haven't actually told the pedal to send that signal anywhere just yet. So we're going to do that now. Immediately, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set our audio output all the way down here on the bottom right. This is just so that we can kind of see it clearly, and it's going to end up looking a bit like a pedal board. So like the input comes through there, and we run along the signal chain just like a normal pedal board, and then we can run out here. Just to keep it simple. Think of this as you're running out into your amp. So, now that this is lit up, I'm going to go interface modules again. This time I'm going to go audio output. Now, the one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep all these settings the same, keep it in stereo, but I'm going to change gain control to on, just because this means if the signal that I have running through is a little bit quiet, I can bump it up at the end. So now that I have an audio output module, if I hook together the audio input to the output by holding down one of the buttons and then holding down the other one, like I just did, you can see that if I press one of them, another one lights up. So this is the left input, and there's the left output. That's the right input, and that's the right output. I've just linked them together. And now they're linked together, if the pedal is activated, as shown by these green lights, we get sound. There's nothing currently doing anything to it. So it doesn't actually really change the tone at all. Now it's not actually really going to do anything to the tone. It's just super clean. There is absolutely nothing happening to this tone. So let's make something happen to this tone. First things first, we're going to have to get rid of the input running to the output that we just set up because we're going to run the input into something else. So what we can do is if we just hit these two together and then we hold this shift button and hit the bin button up here and it deletes it. Now that that's deleted, let's include an overdrive patch. I'm going to include the overdrive right next to the input just because we have a lot of space. Now I'm going to scroll all the way down to effects modules. And then in effects modules, I'm going to go to OD and distortion. And now I'm going to change the color. I might set it to mango, sure thing. And then we also have model types down here. The models are called Plexi, Germ, Classic, Pushed, and Edgy. These are all pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Now, in my use, I have found Plexi, Germ, and Classic to all work really, really great for everything from like classic rock to jazz fusion. The kind of tunes where you don't need a huge amount of distortion, you just need a little bit of overdrive to crisp up the tone in that kind of smooth lead sound. Whereas Pushed and Edgy, I have found to work better for things like modern metal, things that require a bit more gain output. So for the sake of this, because we want something simple, I'm just going to go with Plexi because it's the first option. And we're going to hit done. Now, we have our audio input here, so we're going to run both our left and right audio inputs into the one input that this distortion module has, and now you can see if I hit one of these, this one stays lit up, but if I hit that one, those both light up, because now this little boy is connected to both of these two. And now I'm going to do the same on the other end, except on the output, and now we're going to have a very, very light distortion. I haven't bumped up the gain at all, so it's going to be quite light, but let's see how it sounds. It's a nice subtle crunch, perfect for just adding a little bit to a rhythm tone, for example. Sounds pretty good to me. But now what we're missing from this lead tone, obviously, is some reverb and delay. So let's do that now. First things first, I want to get rid of the connection again, so I'm going to select those two, Shift, Delete. Select those two, Shift, Delete. Now, I'm going to add a delay. If you're relatively new to guitar gear, it's always important to add your delay before the reverb, because if your reverb goes first and then your delay goes after, your reverb will send it to the delay, and the delay will repeat the reverb sound. Whereas if it's the other way around, the delay will run to the reverb, and the delayed sound just gets reverberated. It's much cleaner to put your delay first. So we're going to do that. I'm going to start there, effects modules again, and I'm going to go up to ping pong delay. Now, the Zoia also has a delay with a modulator, which essentially gives you those kind of weird delays that are a bit wobbly and weird. We just want something nice and clean and simple, so I'm going to go ping pong delay. It's just an echo. Now, there's a couple of things you can do here, but for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to change any of these settings, and I'm just going to hit done right there. Now, real quick, I'm going to run my distortion output into the input of the delay, and I'm just going to leave it there for now. Now, I'm going to also add a reverb module. Go down, and I might put in a nice whole reverb. I'm going to get a really big, spacious lead sound with this. And then we run the output 1 into input 1 of the reverb, and then output 2 into input 2 of the reverb. And then I'm going to run the left output of the reverb into the left output of the entire pedal. And now, I haven't changed any of the settings, but we should have a little bit of reverb and delay. That delay went for longer than I thought. But it's sounding pretty good now. So let's adjust that. Now, I think the delay is a bit slow. Now, something that you can do that I'm not going to explain right now is you can actually program this delay to respond to the leftmost button on the Zoia as a tap tempo. This is really handy. It means you don't have to buy an extra tap tempo just to run your delays, and you can also control all sorts of rhythm-based parameters using this leftmost button once you figure out how to program it. There's lots of videos on the internet how to do it. It's really, really simple. Now, because I don't have all the time right now, I am just going to speed it up here. Now, if you have a parameter selected and you want to change how it looks, you have to click in the twister button, because the delay shows me the milliseconds of how quick the delay is, but maybe you have a really specific kind of delay. Maybe you want to play something like Rob Scallon's Rain that is entirely dependent on a really specific delay timer. I hit that, and all of a sudden I have a BPM counter. Now, I think I want it to be a bit quicker. I'm going to set the BPM to, let's say 140. Not too fast, not too slow. Now you might be wondering how I've been changing all these different parameters in the effects. Now, within each of the overall effects, you would have seen how when I selected them, they lit up a whole bunch of different lengths. So, for example, with the overdrive, it lit up 4 lights here, whereas with the delay and the reverb, we have this full line of things lighting up. Every single one of those lights represents a different parameter on the pedal. Kind of like how on a normal pedal, you have all your parameters here, and so you have, this one has a whole bunch of different knobs. These knobs are represented by pressing these individual buttons, and it will tell you what that button represents on the screen here. Now that I've sped up the delay, I might want to change the feedback, and if I press this button here, it actually tells me that this is the feedback, and I might want it to be closer to about -6 rather than -9. Now if I keep going along, we have some other functions that I'm not really going to bother with. We also have the mix. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. I want to really drench this tone. I'm going to maybe set it to about 30, which means that this mix is going to be about 30% delay and 70% normal sound. Let's see how that sounds. Now I might want to change some things about the reverb. I can go through the individual parameters and have a look at what they do. One thing that I always do to my reverbs is I like to drop out the low end. I don't like it when my bottom end is reverberated too much. I think it gets quite muddy. And here, conveniently, we have low EQ. Now this is a pretty crazy feature. Like, this is the kind of thing that you don't even see in your $500 reverb pedals. And this one box has thought of it. So I'm going to set low EQ, and I'm just going to turn it down. I'm going to take it to about -6, because I really like to get rid of all that low end in my reverb. I really don't like it. Now, now that I've cut out some of the low end of that reverb, it's not going to get as muddy when I'm doing a lot of shredding. Now I might want to really drench the reverb. Right now it's 50% reverb and 50% dry signal. Let's set it to 100. Maybe that's too much. Maybe you want to take it back to 70 because you still want it to be really, really drenched, but you don't want it to be too intense. Now, if you look at the timestamp, it's only taken me this long to create a really strong, dreamy lead sound with the Zoia. Now, like I said at the start, it might seem like a scary pedal, but ultimately, it's actually quite simple. It really is just a pedal board in a small box. The bonus is, with all that scary stuff, if you buy this pedal just to figure out the simple stuff at first and just use it to get really rock solid tone, down the line, if you ever do want to get into the weird stuff, it's already there for you to do that with. So again, the Zoia really is the everything pedal, and that includes all the simple stuff that everyone needs a pedal board to achieve. Now, if you're like me and you're in Australia and you want to get your hands on this thing, you can go to dimusiconline.com.au and then use the store locator to find a retailer near you that can get you this beautiful pedal.